Please welcome to the stage Brett Begemann, Chief Operating Officer, Bayer Crop Science, Rob Dongoski, Partner and Agribusiness Leader, Ernst & Young, and Kip Tom, U.S. Representative to the UN Agencies for Food and Agriculture.
Good afternoon. Just as a point of clarification, I am not serving in that role as ambassador yet. Still need to get full Senate confirmation, so if confirmed, we have to wait a little bit here. Well, Forbes AgTech, welcome to Indiana. I can say that after 4 years of seeing the successes that you've had in California and the outcome of that, we welcome you to our great Hoosier state. One thing for certain, here in Indiana, we take a holistic view of ag and food. We look from the very beginning when we think about the development of a microbiome or a new genetic event or some new molecule could be used in crop protection. And then we think about that all the way through the farm gate, all the way to food processors, distribution, and then on to the consumer and consumer health. So we understand that our end goal is to improve consumer health. So I think in Indiana, as I said, we understand this, and we understand how ag tech is so sorely needed to make sure that we can accelerate, we find the collaboration, and we harmonize this food supply system. So let's get started. So I'll start out by saying this, and then we'll get into a few questions. The agricultural Internet of Things has been heralded primarily as a way to improve operational efficiencies. But in today's environment, farms can also benefit greatly by seeing it as a tool for finding growth in unexpected opportunities. In the future, successful agriculture companies will use the Internet of Things to capture new growth through 3 approaches: boost revenues by increasing production, creating new hybrid business models, and exploiting intelligent technologies to fuel innovation and transform workforce. So Brett and Rob, let's get started here. Brett, let's start out on this. Let's focus on collaboration. Innovation cannot happen in a vacuum. Let's face it, we've seen that all across the space so far. We're seeing a lot of collaboration. There needs to be more emphasis on this collaboration across all players. How can you, especially on the provider side with your acquisition of Climate Corp and many other companies you're looking at, do a better job of bringing and packaging all these innovative tools together for growers?
Yeah, thank you, Kip, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think, well, first of all, it's fantastic to see all the tremendous investment going into ag tech and ag innovation. Being in agriculture all my life, I never ever imagined that we would see this kind of investment in agriculture, and it's so welcome, and as Kip said, it's so needed. And I do think that agriculture, when you think about the overused analogy of farm to fork, is a highly complex system. It works pretty well for what we need to do today, but the challenges are immense for the future. And I think we have to find ways that we collaborate more across that system. We have to do it faster. We have to do it in early stages of development to ensure that we can see that all of these technologies that are bringing incremental value and innovation see their way to being used as quickly as possible. We're trying to do some of that. We don't have all the answers, but our Field View platform that we developed from Climate, our expressed goal is to help the farmer get all of their data in one place. We don't care what equipment company they're working with or what spray company or applicator or any of the ag tech companies here. It's getting all that information to one place so the farmer has the access to do the analytics across all of that to continue to drive that agronomic productivity and do it, quite frankly, in a more sustainable way than we've done it before. And I welcome anybody here to sit down with our climate team to have a discussion of how that might fit together, because we would tell you that we believe it's going to take a lot of collaboration to make that happen.
Rob, do you have anything to add on that and your observations from E&Y?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is collaboration is no longer just contained in the ag industry. You know, we look at different experiences for the developed markets, the emerging markets. Collaboration comes in many forms, and it includes financial services, it includes governments, it includes NGOs. So we're seeing a convergence of industries to really make the collaboration ultimately work for production ag.
Well, let's talk a little bit about digital ag, but let's get it front and center. I'm a producer, I'm a farmer today, and there's some that's in this room and there's others that's going to follow this online, but the question is, how do we take these technologies and derive value to our bottom line? So I know how we're doing it at our business. I know the investments we've made and the other projects we've been involved with, but we look at it this way, and I'd like to hear your perspective on this. People in both fields, and it doesn't matter whether it's Wall Street, baseball, or agriculture, operate with beliefs and biases. To the extent you can eliminate both and replace them with data, you can gain a clearer objective. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your products, from Field View to Climate and others, helping farmers get to that and driving real value back to their farm today.
Yeah, I think you make a good point when we think about the can I call them emotional biases that are embedded in all the decisions that people make, including myself. And one of the things that I think will change agriculture more than any innovation I've seen in the last 35 years in agriculture is the heavy use of data and analytics. And let data and analytics drive the decision, not necessarily what happened last year, not what happened by some other generation in the family, but really truly relying on data and analytics. And then we have to build the tools and the capabilities around that to allow the producer to make the applications and do the things in the field that optimize that system. So using crop protection materials in a field only where they're needed, meter by meter, not spraying fields as averages, managing our fertility meter by meter across the field, putting only the appropriate amount that can be utilized in that specific part. And at the end of the day, the ultimate goal is to increase the productivity of the land we're utilizing, and I always say doing it with less stuff. And I don't know enough because I don't have all that data yet to know what stuff we can reduce, but I'm confident that we don't have to do everything the same as an average across the field. And data and analytics, I believe, is going to be the principal driver of helping us do that. And those are buzzwords, but it takes great people doing phenomenal work with large sets of data to make that happen. And I think it takes everybody in the room working collaboratively together again to make that happen.
Yeah, maybe just an add to it as well. I completely agree with Brett, and I think the one thing to think about is all the decisions of what you invest in tend to kind of fall when the analytics kind of falls back. It's based upon either risk, profit, or effort. And you think about those three kind of things coming together, and I can lower my risk, which may lower my profit. Is that okay? And those decisions are gonna have to be really forefront. And if you've got a technology, or you've got a capability that's not impacting one of those positively, you effectively have a shiny toy. And I think that's something that we all need to think about. I think the other thing, the data and analytics, what it really does is it moves us from that classic 40 chances to refine the perfection on the farm to many, many chances to our constraint is no longer about experiences, it's about computing power. And right now the cost of computing power is not that high. So I mean, the ultimate opportunity there is pretty extensive.
There's no question. I know on our own farm, we collect a lot of data. We put a lot of it to good use. We look at how we can reduce our applications of some maybe chemistries or maybe seed products and put them the right seed in the right place at the right population, or maybe we do a variable rate fungicide application. So in the end of the day, we're using less resources to produce more. We're having less of an impact on the environment. We're increasing productivity, hopefully lowering costs, but I think there's always more we can do, and as we benchmark together with other farmers and peer groups, I think there's a lot of value. And again, we'll lead into a little bit more of that later on. So let's talk for a moment about societal acceptance of ag tech. This spans the whole spectrum from, let's face it, CRISPR-Cas all the way through the data science technologies and the food handling and everything else that's available today. In your view, and the people you talk with and who you interact with in developing these new products, how do you feel society feels about what we're doing in your labs, in your offices, and on our farms?
Yeah, I think, you know, we'll say uneducated, uninformed at times, and at times, you know, incredibly excited about the future of what it could mean. You know, so I think, you know, from a societal standpoint, we're seeing adoption of technology outside of ag, you know, and so we got to, you know, take things like Amazon and Uber, and what does that mean for ag, and how do we apply those and make those good news stories that that can transcend, you know, CRISPR and all the opportunities that we all know that could bring to bear has got a great impact, not just for ag and animal health. It's got great opportunities for human health and things we're doing there. So I think the story's got to be well-rounded, and we need to, you know, probably again collaborate. To your point earlier, Brett, I think we can collaborate around that story, you know, much better.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think if I look at the past and try to learn from that and go to the future, it's a pretty small group of people around the world that engage in agriculture. When you look at the total population. In the developing world, it's much higher, but unfortunately, it's more the world where very small percentages work in agriculture that are influencing a lot of these decisions around the world. And I think we're past the point of doing this in a vacuum. We have to engage society sooner. And when we talk about a lot of the new technology that all of us experience, whether it's your smartphone you carry in your pocket or your computers or the things that you do and the companies you were mentioning, those are all consumers that are exposed to all of that technology as it's developing. Yet in agriculture, we're off over here in the corner sometimes working on this really cool stuff, creating this incredible breakthrough technology to do incredible things to protect the planet, and nobody knows we're working on it because it doesn't touch them, they don't feel it, they don't see it. We need to bring them in early. We need to have those conversations and talk about what we're doing very openly, engage them in that process, share with them, learn from them, understand their perspectives. Because I think at the end of the day, most people have their heart in a good place. They really do fundamentally care. They care about the planet and how we take care of the planet. I think they care about livestock and animals. I think they care about how we treat the land, how we farm, and how we grow our crops. And I think ultimately they care that everybody gets fed a well-balanced meal. Yet at the same time, we're not including all of them in our discussions as we think about how we're doing this and invest in this new technology. So there's a lot more room for a lot more conversation with a lot more people about what we're doing, because ultimately, at the end of the day, our consumer is the same consumer, and they need to be exposed to this earlier. And I fundamentally believe that well-informed people will draw similar conclusions, and they just don't always have all the information.
Agree with you so much on that. So I will say this as well. You know I look at our farm, and like I said, the amount of data we produce, we see it as a potential for us to leverage up our supply chain, to really provide more information to our end users who are then taking it on the consumer. And we're hopeful that someday, like we heard in a conversation earlier about blockchain, we're hoping we're making the right steps and getting to that place where we can develop that or deliver that value. So this kind of leads me into another question, and neither one of you knew this question was going to come up, so it's going to come as a surprise. But I'll say one thing for certain: workforce. When we think about the workforce on the farm, the people who are actually doing this work, they're entering the data on the computer, or they're changing a program, or they're going out and they're applying these different data tools. How do you think we are supported today on the farm? What are we doing to educate our workforce to make sure that we can deliver on the promise of these new technologies? Rob?
Yeah, I think we've got a long ways to go. You know, I think we've, if you just look at the urbanization rates, and you know, we're talking about potentially 70% of people living in urban environments by the year 2050, right? And so with that leaves this great void on farm. And void comes in a couple different ways, right? One is for production ag. One of it is everyone goes to the cities and they're not bringing the education back to the farm. And I think there's got to be some furthering of that education platform around what exactly is needed on the farm. And it may historically have been more bioscience oriented, in the future maybe more data science oriented. And so how do we excite people about what's going on the farm? I guess I've got a few millennials in my household. And so, you know, I look at what they're excited about, and I think, you know, if you guys think about food and ag, you would be really excited to go back on a farm. but they're attracted to software and video games and everything else in their career. So I think it's we got a long ways to go to kind of educate as well as kind of make ag an attractive place for young folks to enter.
No, I agree with what Rob's saying. I think I'll go back to the point I was making before. If we do an effective job of engaging society about what we're doing and how we're working on these things and all the incredible scientific advancement that's being utilized that we see here, that we see in the Silicon Valley, that we see basically all over the world, and if we start some of those conversations in schools and in universities, an outcome of that is, just generally speaking, the populace becomes much more educated about the incredible science and opportunities in agriculture that gives them reason to see interest in looking at agriculture. I think Purdue here in Indiana does a fantastic job of educating their students, and I often tell university people, they ask, what do you need from our students? What do you need them to be able to do when they come? And I said, well, one is that I don't know that you need to teach everybody to be an agronomist. But I know that I'll have my years wrong, but 25 years ago, if you came out of a university system and you didn't know how to use Excel, Word, and PowerPoint, you were going to struggle to get an opportunity in a company. And I think coming out of universities today, if you don't know how to use data and analytics, you don't have to be a data scientist, but you need to use data, analytics, software, tools to drive your decision making, et cetera, and know how to intuitively use the kind of tools that are going to be in the hands of the farmers in those days. You're going to struggle. But at the same time, if they have that kind of education, one of the things they're going to learn is one of the biggest places we're applying all this technology is agriculture. And that you create that interest by experiential learning of getting to see what's going on. And at the end, we have a more educated workforce. We have a more experienced society with the technologies and tools we're trying to use. And I think we can build to a much better place.
So it's going to be a lot more than just to make a profit on a farm and to run a farm. You have to be able to do more than just drive a tractor. You have to figure out these data systems. Well, let's face it, over the past 10 years in ag tech, there's been silence from a lot of companies like IBM, Apple, Microsoft, and we keep wondering when they're going to get involved. 2 weeks ago, I sat in the office of the president of Microsoft, and we had a half-hour discussion about this, and we're mainly talking about some global food security issues, but this was brought up about ag tech and their investment, and when it was brought up, I got a smile. So it tells me maybe something's about to happen. We'll see, but we would certainly welcome their investment and their look into the future with us. But what have the two of you seen as far as the big guys?
Yeah, in full disclosure, we've got an alliance with Microsoft, so we're thrilled about what they're doing and where they're heading, right? So, but I think when you look at the role of big tech in a lot of different industries, they have stood up, they've enabled, they've connected, and they've made a lot of things possible in a lot of industries. And I think they've recognized that there's a huge opportunity in ag, not just in the U.S., but on a global scale. And so I think, it's interesting. I was, watching. I think I actually watched Thursday night and Monday night football last week. To be quite honest, but Microsoft and IBM both had commercials on there about artificial intelligence, and in both commercials, ag was spotlighted. I thought, wow, it's really kind of mainstream, and they're starting to come out a little bit about some of the things they're thinking. I know Microsoft has a really interesting program called AI for Earth, which is much more than just about agriculture and production. But I think the thing that I would look for in big tech is not to replace a lot of the innovation and startup community that's underway already, but to actually stand it up and enable it and make it run more efficiently. So that's where I think big tech will really kind of start to fill in the white space, if you will, in between.
Well, I think it's offshoot, if you will, of a lot of learning that's occurred over the past 15 years as I see a lot of people in a lot of companies become a lot more interested in agriculture. And I think part of it is because they're hearing it from consumers about the interest that they have, how their food was produced, they want to know where it came from, et cetera. And it probably has a lot to do with a lot of the ag tech that's also going on when you think about that. And I'm not shocked at all that some of the bigger tech companies are starting to look at agriculture, because I actually think from a contribution to society, there's a bigger opportunity in agriculture than there are in many other spaces to make a difference in people's lives around the world. We're pretty proud of what we do in agriculture, but 900 million people still go to bed hungry every night, so we're not getting it done today. And we got another 2.5, pick your number, billion people joining us by 2050. We got a lot to get done, and we don't have any more land, we don't have any more water. We already use 70–80% of the fresh water. We need big ag tech or big tech companies to step up into this space and bring the skills and competencies that they have. And back to the early conversation of collaboration, there's a place for them to work with all of us to leverage the things they do so well to help us do the things that we need to do. I don't expect them to necessarily go out to the farm, but gosh, there's so much they could do behind the scenes to really enable what all of us are trying to do. So I hope their interest is genuine, and I welcome them to the space. We need all the help we can get.
Well, I know from a producer's perspective and somebody that's been involved in ag tech for a number of years, you look at the investment that's came into the industry. And if you look at a bubble chart, you look at a lot of other sector or other industries, and it's a very significant amount of money that's been spent, research and development and over into ag tech. But when you look at ag, it's almost like a little pinprick on the graph. It's not very much yet, but I know you just in one of your acquisitions, nearly $1 billion. We had Corteva by Granular for about $300 million, and there's been many others, John Deere and some of their purchases as well. Do you see this continuing, or do you see it ramping up, this investment in innovation?
I have no doubt that there's going to continue to be a significant investment in innovation. I don't think we have a choice. I share a silly little story with people. I have an iPhone in my pocket, and I suspect most of you have a smartphone of some kind in your pocket. And I'd ask you the rhetorical question, if it's changed how you live your life in the last 10 years. I know it sure has changed mine pretty dramatically. And then I look at companies and I look at our agricultural customers and say, have we changed as much as what that iPhone has changed things? And I don't think so. But that's just a personal opinion. So to me, I don't think we have a choice but to continue investing aggressively in this space. Some of that will be acquisitions of other technologies. Some of that will be new ones that we don't see today stepping up and becoming the next Microsoft or Amazon or whoever, but working more diligently in this space. And I think it's just inevitable given the challenge that we face in feeding all the people and doing it with the basic tools that we have of water and land. We need it. So I think that investment opportunity will attract a lot of people to the space and a lot of companies to the space.
Yeah, I think we're in kind of an unprecedented time when you look at the whole value chain from producer to consumer, and you get consumer preferences changing on one end, healthier food, want to know what's in my food, how is it made, where to come from, all those sorts of things. And then you go to the producer side, we've got consolidation, land, farm size is getting bigger in virtually every part of the world. And you look across the entire value chain, the profit pools are shifting. And they're moving from to right to left and so forth, and I think investment will follow that. So we really need to watch how those profit pools shift and see, opportunistically, the bigger the pool, the more investment will go there.
So let's talk a little bit about business models. Let's face it, agriculture has been very structured. Really hasn't changed a lot in the way we produce and go to the marketplace. But when we look at production agriculture, now that we've brought data science in and we have the ability to better understand what's going on in our business, we can work across broader platforms. We can provide more information to that end user. How do you see us going forward? Do you see a shifting in business models? We know what data science did to Walmart and the way its ability to compete against the Sears and Roebucks of the day, and now we see Amazon and what they're doing. What do you see in production agriculture? How do you see the business model changing because of our use of data?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is this ability to hyper-focus on customer segments and create an experience around micro segments in the market where historically we've had to kind of broad apply, so we can call it variable rate the customer experience, if you will. So I think that's a great opportunity, but I think it challenges that a lot of the players on how do they want to play in that experience, what role do they want to play. I was just with a client the other day, and I said, where do you want to be on the speed dial list? Do you want to be number 1 or you want to be number 3? And in the future, it could be a case where to really own the grower experience, you may not just have to provide best products and delivery and quality and all those things, but you may want to leverage things like, I've got, my growers need life insurance. How do I bring a life insurance platform to them? How do I bring, a consumer banking experience or other things like that? So I think this intense focus on the experience is very, very important and has the ability to really change, relationships across the whole spectrum.
Yeah, I think we're naive if we think that agriculture is so unique that business models won't change in agriculture when they've changed in just about every other industry out there, and we're actually behind, in my opinion. I think one of the things that needs to have a lot more thought go into it, and I believe is a significant opportunity, and I'll paraphrase it to say, we need to focus more on outcome orientation than input orientation. And today, so much of the business models are focused on inputs, whether it's selling them to a producer or getting them to a producer, et cetera, but more focused on what did we actually work with that producer to accomplish as an output. And based on that output, that's how you get valued as a supplier. And the better you do at driving that outcome and that output, the more you're rewarded. And if you're not successful in doing that, you get displaced by someone that's the more appropriately positioned to do that. And I think that's just an area that's rich to be looked at. And again, it's one of those things that takes collaboration across the supply chain, but I think it can be done, and I believe it needs to be done.
Yeah, just maybe want to add to that too, Brett. I think completely agree on the outcome orientation. We're seeing that in jet engines, we're seeing it in elevators and all kinds of things, right? I think the other is this emergence of platforms. If we think back, you mentioned smartphones, you think back 15 years ago when you went to buy a mobile phone, you thought, do I want a camera, do I want a flip phone, do I want this, that, and the other? Today, that's not your first question. Your first question is, I want to be on iOS or Android. And then after you answer that question, now you start to think about what features and functionality. I think that same future is coming to ag in a pretty fast way. So
one lightning round question. We only got about 2.5 minutes to go. I hear there's been some consolidation in the ag sector lately. I guess we had Dow and DuPont go together, Corteva and Bayer and Monsanto, your new company. There was always a lot of talk when this happened, how that was going to facilitate the ramping up of investment in research and development dollars in ag tech. It's up to you. I'll let you take it from there, and then Rob, I'll hear from you.
Well, I'll be quick and say, Rob, a few minutes, or a few seconds, I should say. I think the principle by which we brought the two companies together, namely Monsanto and Bayer, was totally focused on driving innovation. And particularly driving innovation in agriculture. And we've only been together 5 weeks, so I can't give you a report card and say how we doing. I can tell you the enthusiasm is as high as it's ever been. I can tell you the expectation is probably greater than it's ever been that will drive innovation in the space. And I have absolutely no doubt when I look to the past and I read from history, some of the biggest changes and breakthroughs have come when areas of science and disciplines come together. And what we're observing today is the fields of chemistry and biology crashing together with digital and data science. And we're right in the heart of that, and it's going to drive innovation more than I think most people imagine today.
Yeah, I think this is the most exciting time to be in this industry for the exact reasons Brett you mentioned. I think from a transactions and mergers, acquisitions, all kinds of different relationships. I think we're at best we're at the middle, if not at the start of some of the things. There's still a lot of interesting relationships that could emerge as we move forward.
One final comment before I thank Rob and Brett for their help this afternoon. As innovation in food and agriculture is not limited by its access to technology. It's only limited by our ability to dream. And we need to dream big. We've got a growing world and a hungry world. As Brett said, there's nearly 900 million people around the world hungry today. We need to make sure we do our part in innovating and helping feed that hungry world. Thanks, Brett and Rob. Appreciate it.
We will now take a short 20-minute break.